Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to today's sustainability seminar with Stephanie Brownstein. My name is Emily Gusky, and I'm a community engagement and outreach specialist at the Illinois Sustainable Technology Center, a part of the Prairie Research Institute at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. Today we're going to start the seminar with the university's land acknowledgement. As a land-grant institution, the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign has a responsibility to acknowledge the historical context in which it exists. In order to remind ourselves and our community, we will begin this event with the following statement. We are currently on the lands of the Peoria, Kaskaskia, Piankashaw, Wea, Miami, Mascoutin, Odawa, Sauk, Meskwaki, Kickapoo, Potawatomi, Ojibwe, and Chickasaw nations. It is necessary for us to acknowledge these Native nations and for us to work with them as we move forward as an institution. Over the next 150 years, we will be a vibrant community inclusive of all of our differences, with Native peoples at the core of our efforts. We'd also like to note that all Illinois Sustainable Technology Center seminars are certified green events through the University of Illinois Institute for Sustainability, Energy, and Environment. To find out more about certified green events through the university, please visit sustainability.illinois.edu. To find out more about ISTC's seminar series or to sign up for the events email list, please visit istc.illinois.edu/events. A couple of housekeeping items. This webinar will be recorded, and that will be available within about a week on ISTC's website. Everyone joining us online will remain muted, and we'll take questions at the end of the seminar. You can use the Q&A function to input your questions, and you can upvote questions using the thumbs up button. And I'll read the questions to the speaker at the end with the most popular questions first, and then in the order in which they are received. If you're having any technical difficulties, you can send me a private chat message. Today's speaker is Stephanie Brownstein, who will be presenting on exploring the challenges of build and operate grants. Stephanie is the technical lead carbon capture scale-up for the Illinois Sustainable Technology Center within the Prairie Research Institute. She manages the scale-up and environmental permitting of carbon capture and utilization projects at various power plants. Stephanie holds a Bachelor of Science and Master of Engineering degrees in chemical engineering and has 13 years of experience managing environmental and safety compliance in industry and research. Welcome, Stephanie.
Great, thanks, Emily. For the introduction, my name is Stephanie Brownstein, technical lead of carbon capture scale-up at the Illinois Sustainable Technology Center. And today we'll be talking about some of the challenges of build and operate grants. So a lot of the webinars that happen through ISTC tend to be very technical based. This will be a little more, I'll say, top level of the shift of transferring those technologies into industrial settings. So for the progression of technology development is, once that technology is validated in the lab, the next step is typically to do testing and validate that technology in a relevant environment. So often that looks like partnering with an industrial site and utilizing their resources to do a design, a build, and then an operation phase. So real quick, just kind of going through top level, there are common challenges that come up when progressing to that build operate sequence. And through the presentations, we'll be going into more detail on each of them. A common one at the very beginning is forming the project team structure. So this is who are the members or entities on the team being extremely important, but also how are they interconnected, equally being of importance. Who will the host site be? Where you do the work, making sure that they have the capabilities and the required resources, as well as the commitment to be a part of the project and provide information along the whole way. For any build and operate, anytime you're bringing in purchasing of materials, equipment, and bringing in contractors, there are significant elements to the budget and cost challenges are likely to arise. As how do you create plans around that? In recent years, community benefits and how you engage the local community where the projects are happening has always been a key point of importance. But through recent regulations, it's now become requirement of these projects and a significant part of what gets reviewed in the applications as well as throughout implementation. So a challenge can be building that competency around community benefits plan, and then ensuring a successful implementation of it during the project. Timeline impacts. The cadence and the speed of grant funded projects can sometimes look very different than I'll say a corporate or a commercial solo project, and making sure that all of the entities on the team understand what those differences are and how it plays into everyone's respective goals. And lastly, we'll go over how between the funding agencies we work, or at least myself, mostly with the Department of Energy, and as new branches are formed, each one has very specific goals, but sometimes those scopes and goals can be overlapping, and making sure that between past or current projects and future projects, understanding what are those overlaps and making sure you're not, double dipping, when doing budgeting or creating the scope. So we've been involved at ISTC in a handful of, build, construct, operate projects, but I'd say these three are the main top hitters. We've completed what we call a biphasic project. It utilized a biphasic solvent for carbon capture of coal flue gas at the Abbott Power Plant in Champaign, Illinois. That a successful campaign and has now been completed. Currently in progress is testing also of a coal flue gas slipstream at City Water, Light and Power in Springfield, Illinois, in order to utilize CO2 for algae growth. And that's been built. Testing some has already occurred and will continue into 2024. And then lastly, and size-wise, the most, and budget-wise, the most significant, is a large pilot carbon capture units utilizing the Lindy BASF solvent technology, also at City Water, Light and Power in Springfield, Illinois. So that one is all procurement, offsite fabrication is complete. Half the building is done. The other half of construction is just around the corner, and we're looking forward to jumping into operations to get it done. So I kind of mentioned, the first bullet point at the beginning, the foundation of building your project team structure is extremely important and can be a catalyst of success or hurdles or barriers that you may face throughout the project implementation. So the first question I need to ask is, what entity will serve as prime, right? Who will be the principal investigator, and which group will that come from? The importance there is, whoever serves as prime must be able to coordinate the efforts between all entities, having an understanding of the whole project scope, existing or growing relationships with all of the team members in order to facilitate effective communication. And again, like that competency of understanding what is everyone doing. Similarly, the prime will serve as the face of the project, right, to the funding agency, and kind of becomes the go-between between the funding agency and the rest of the project. I kind of view it sometimes as like, the quarterback type role, right, needing to be able to distribute information and gather information to then relay back. Also, a component of the project team, certain portions of work can fall, I'll say, between, like, is someone going to be a sub-awardee or a contractor? Within usually the funding announcement, there are delineations of, like, clearly what are those roles and who will fall under, but they come with different stipulations, different payment terms, roles of responsibility, and having that alignment with a particular like contracting groups early on, say which role is most appropriate and will fit what they're needing. You can kind of see in the the spider chart of the diagram that it also delineates what is everyone's role, what tasks will they completing within the project. So it is very important to clearly define the responsibilities of each entity. A lot of times we'll put together a division of responsibility charts, have to be very detailed, have everyone review it in case any tasks are missing, and assign who is the primary person to complete each task, as well as secondaries to support. That review has actually served a lot of benefits because it can also call out not just within the very siloed tasks, but how do they interconnect. So as an example, commenting boundary points between the tasks where you could have one entity doing the construction for inside battery limits or ISBL work, which is like the core technology equipment, and then having a separate entity doing, we call it like OSBL, outside battery limits, which is the utility piping connections to the host site, and making sure that the handoffs between the two, the linkage between the two, is also an additional task that gets addressed and communicated between entities. Understanding the contracts, the contractual requirements of each group can also be a hurdle and is important to understand early on. So this could range from payment terms to insurance and indemnity clauses, right? Especially for a host site. What assurance do they need for people doing work on site? And it's always excited to dive into the technical part of the project, but it's maybe the less glamorous behind the scenes part of working with a lot of legal teams to make sure that I's are dotted, T's are crossed, and each group is getting what they need. Oh, and lastly, I bring up payment constraints, and by that I mean each entity, again from a contractual piece or how their financial groups function, can have different payment restrictions, right? Coming from a university of state entity, payments reviews and terms are very different for us than they do, say, a commercial contractor, and just understanding how those reviews and requirements affect the budgeting and the payments of certain elements as the project proceeds, particularly when, again, talking equipment and contractors with understanding. I always enjoy talking about this slide and bring it up here as when you're building your project team, you want to make sure from that division of responsibility you have all of your boxes checked, but you don't want to have 40 different team entities in place to do it. From a management communication piece, it's more ideal to have a smaller, tight-knit, more robust team that has extensive competencies. And so, I look at us within the Prairie Research Institute as an example of ways that we've successfully leveraged all of our surveys within the Institute to support, carbon capture, utilization, sequestration projects, and trying to do that same leveraging with our other partners. So kind of where we've succeeded in that is the Illinois Sustainable Technology Center that I'm a part of, do a lot of focus on the carbon capture and utilization side of things. Our sister survey, the Illinois State Geological Survey, a lot of their work falls under geological storage. For both types of projects, there is the consideration of utility consumption, in particular water. And so our Illinois State Water Survey has supported doing studies and reviews of how that local resources are impacted and what needs to be considered in the designs based on that. For when we are doing like ground disturbance activity, this is kind of a newer piece that we've been working through. Is sometimes local or regional nations will, ask that we put together what's called like an important discovery plan. So anytime you are disturbing the ground and there's the potential for cultural artifacts, you need to involve an archaeologist and do that on-site review. And our archaeological survey has been a huge help in making that happen and being in communication with the nations. And then lastly, for our Illinois Natural History Survey, anytime you do construction as part of an environmental review, also having to consider what potential endangered species could be impacted by the activity. And they have a lot of information on file that's supporting that. So again, I feel very lucky to be a part of an institute that has so many resources that we can leverage and bring it up as, again, just kind of a structuring guideline that can help overcome hurdles as they go along the way of trying to have as robust project partners. The host site, right? We're talking about moving technologies out of the lab into, say, quote unquote, the real world. But where you choose as the host site is immensely important to the success of the project long term. I have it written there. Without the host site, the project can't happen. And some of the learnings, having worked with various host sites and seen issues that other peers have had as well. First off, wanting to make sure that you have engagement from the highest level of the host site organization. Sometimes you can have an individual site that is like extremely excited to be a part of it, but maybe they're a part of a larger corporation or organization that, one example that's occurred is, if things shift financially or, the new, powers at play within that organization higher up decide to change direction, that the project can, fall flat and you no longer have a place to do it. And so it is important to make sure that you have commitments from the very top as well, depending on how things are organized, not just from the host site, like physical location. Cost share capability of the host site has increased in importance over the past couple of years as well. So we found that funding agencies are pushing for the host site to contribute cost share as a way to demonstrate their commitment to the project. Again, this is, can come in many different kinds of form, but maybe going even back to that assurance that, people have skin in the game, right? They're not gonna pull out and not have a place to do the project, and that, they are also viewing all the benefits of the project happening at their location. Cost share conversations sometimes need to happen early on as well. And lastly, just the host site's bandwidth to support the project. You can have as much excitement and as much money as you need, but if you don't have the resources at the host site to help perform design reviews, give data from how they operate, facilitate and participate in like hazard assessments, then it similarly you'll struggle to succeed. And so a lot of times, even in the application process, you can gauge that, let's say, the bandwidth or capabilities of a host site in terms of providing information, their availability to be a part of conversations, and ensuring that exists strongly upfront, as that'll relate throughout the project. For any project that involves buying large pieces of equipment and doing construction, there will always be cost challenges. And just listening here, a couple of main ones that can be hurdles that we've had experience with. Material and equipment sourcing and price changing. The market, for anyone, with experience in this area in the past couple of years, especially with COVID, has seen some drastic shifts. And so some things are completely unexpected and you have to kind of turn on a dime to redirect. But as you're seeing new information of how those markets and sources are changing, planning as much ahead as possible. Similarly, a challenge has been, limited skilled labor, as a lot of skilled tradespeople have been retiring. That limited labor pool has sometimes impacted construction costs, and needing to understand how that affects or is affected by like the area that you're doing the project in terms of like the labor pool. For any project, like for those first two bullet points, how those could impact cost overruns, you need to have the conversations early of if there are cost overruns, who will provide additional funding, right? That you may get a chunk of that from the grant source, but when you talk about cost share, a lot of that will also need to come from the project team, and having those discussions again early on of if that happens, who will participate with the bill or be a part of those conversations. And then trying to, again, it's hard when things change so quickly and you don't know what you don't know, looking into the future, but trying to create and implement risk mitigation plans for cost increases. And we'll go through an example in a minute of how we try to tackle that. So an example, I'll use that that large pilot project. What happened at City Water Lake Power in Springfield is we've, from a costing standpoint, been in the work for the past couple of years and have hit maybe two different significant cost hurdles, each of which we've had to readjust our project strategy. The first was around equipment and materials. So, having over a 2-year gap between when the quotes were obtained pre-COVID and then when quotes were rebid post-COVID, there was a significant increase in the material and equipment costs. Also found some of that being driven by supply chain issues. There weren't as many places to get them, and so prices increased. Another issue was, again, maybe with that issue with the supply chain, but fewer vendors were bidding, and so fewer options to choose from in terms of selecting the lowest price. And also found that the quote period became much shorter, rather than what maybe typically 60 or 90 days was dropped down to 3 to 5 days, and you had to make a really quick decision to pull the trigger, with the knowing that if you don't, there's a risk of the increase prices happening. So the way we shifted our project strategy at that time was, we didn't change anything for the total project budget. What we looked at, there was a phase for construction followed by a phase for operation, and made plans to use the funding to finish the construction phase, and then slightly reduce operations, staying within the same project budget. We also made strategies to move quickly to lock in pricing of the updated POs that we did receive to avoid any price increase risks. The second hurdle that we hit, so was at this point where everything was procured. We've pretty much finished offsite fabrication, and we're looking to put it all together on site, do the essentially on-site construction work. Again, this is a gap between when the original cost estimates were formulated based off of the information available, and then earlier this year when the actual bids were received. Again, a significant hike in pricing that was unexpected. When we dug into a little bit further, the reasons were, unique labor markets of the area, combined with that, what's being called the great retirement of that, highly experienced tradespeople, retiring and leaving the workforce. So what that does is bidders have to account for that reduced experience and efficiencies when they are giving pricing. The way we shifted our strategy there, using the available funding to successfully finish construction is where we're at now, but having to have like extensive conversations with the DOE and our project team to negotiate additional funding to complete the planned operation phase. And that's more of I'd say a short-term goal for the scope of this project, but we are also, when we talk about community benefits, looking at a long-term focus where, from the DEIA standpoint, focus on that workforce engagement and how do we pull in disadvantaged communities to help have those opportunities within the workforce. So yeah, those are some substantial hurdles, a lot of work to get through, but where are we at now, which is kind of in a really exciting spot, is that all equipment procurement is complete, all offsite fabrication is complete. I really enjoy that, bottom left picture. You can see all of our site foundations and civil work is complete and where everything's going to go. Everything from that outside battery limits construction is now complete. And this is, flue gas piping, wastewater piping, electrical, all of your supports and tie-ins. So we're now in the final phase of, proceeding with the MEI construction to make the technology physical elements become vertical on site so that we can test them. Want to talk a little bit about community benefits plan. I'm not going to go into depth of what are all the specific requirements for a community benefits plan, just because it is very detailed and all of that information does exist, within the funding agencies' websites and guidances. But talking about it, again, in the sense that it is a very important part of projects, and with it being a newer requirement does necessitate building competency around what those requirements are to successfully implement them. So I guess for context, the DOE requires a community benefits plan as a part of all Inflation Reduction Act and bipartisan infrastructure law funding opportunity announcements. They've pushed the significance of it in that, when you're putting together a proposal, 20% of the technical merit review is based off of the community benefits plan that's submitted. So again, it is very substantial and important to understand what the requirements are and how you will successfully implement it during the project scope. Something to note as well is the key folks or team entities, that tend to be implementing the community benefits plan, usually the prime, the technology owner, and particularly the host site, since they're the ones that are physically in the community already what's happening, but can also utilize third-party experts to help collect data to understand what does the community opportunities look like and what are actions that can be taken within the plan. So those groups do exist and can be able to do that. From a timeline impacts, this one I would enjoy talking about because there are some pieces that people may not expect, right? I think for certain either host sites or technology owners, it can be very tempting to say, hey, here's this funding opportunity announcement. I just have to do a little bit of paperwork and I'm excited to have free money. But nothing's free. And there are, requirements within, again, in our case, the Department of Energy, that you have to adhere to, that can and will impact timelines that could, again, push the project at a different cadence than what a typical industry group might be used to. One of the reasons is just from solely the negotiation process. Once you maybe receive an award, it can still take up to 6 to 12 months for the project to actually start and kick off. Sometimes what can happen, that picture in the left corner is just kind of a visual. The concept of a down select process is between phases. Certain projects can say, here are, in this case, there were 9 teams in this first phase, and then based off of what those results are, on this, date, we do a review, and then only 5 teams proceed, etc. And we've seen where some folks can get very excited that, oh wow, we can do this first phase a lot quicker and want to proceed faster, but you have to wait for all of the participating other projects to meet that same point for the funding agency to do their collective review. So sometimes you have to wait for that milestone, even if you can do the work quicker. These projects are typically broken up into budget periods with very specific scopes. And so it can be tempting to say, I can do work ahead of time. I can, look forward and try to proceed things quicker, but from a funding standpoint, you're not allowed to perform work outside of those established budget period scopes. And then lastly, something we've seen that can impact timeline as well is called like the NEPA process, the National Environmental Protection Act. And kind of under that umbrella, you can see all of the different acts that go into it. It's a very intense, environmental review of the project that's happening. And this can range from, water emissions, just other natural resources, flora, fauna, etc. And there are 3 different tiers of a NEPA review, each tier having, based off of the required complexity, a different timeline to be done. And so this is where having some of that experience really comes into play and can help to estimate and consider, okay, for our project, what's the most likely NEPA determination, and how do I build that into my timeline? I'd also talk about this concept of the inadvertent discovery plan. We're needing to have an archaeologist either present or helping to put together a strategy for anytime you have a ground disturbance that could find a potential artifact. And so that could impact your construction timeline, things that you may have been able to do in parallel, now you have to do in series, which could delay or shift things longer than someone solely working from like an industry might not expect. And really, I guess, my last kind of point or consideration that again has been kind of newer for us, but still significant, is coordinating between different funding sources. And this is, I guess, especially relevant if, as an entity, you're involved in multiple projects that come from different either agencies or branches of agencies. So this large 10 megawatt capture pilot is an example that I was going through earlier, happening in Springfield. And then similarly, there is it's called a carbon safe project, and that's being led by our geological survey, looking at sequestration. And where we're at now is, coordinating with the DOE, but it's their OSED branch, which was formed, I think at like the end of 2021. So they're newer, and they all have their own directives and purposes. But the fact that deliverables and information from these other two projects are feeding into this integrated project that includes capture, transport, and sequestration. From a funding and scope of work standpoint, there's been a lot of kind of review with a fine-tooth comb of what already exists. Again, it's that ensuring of not double dipping, and also that the deliverables from other projects meet the required deliverables of the larger project going forward. So yeah, it's not super difficult to hash that out. It can just take a little bit of time and coordination between existing and future projects. With that was yeah, everything I had to cover today. It's been a bit of a journey, especially in the past couple of years with a lot of shifts. But all excited to talk about it. So thank you for your time and helping answer questions.
Thanks, Stephanie. So now for our attendees, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A chat, like I said, and we will see. I have one, Stephanie. So I know you mentioned like with the project that was affected pre-COVID versus post-COVID, what kind of lessons learned were there from this like very, very unexpected challenge of COVID?
Yeah, yeah, maybe the biggest lesson is resiliency. But the thing about the COVID situation and the market changes is like we were not unique, right? Our project was just like everyone else facing very similar cost and market and resource changes. So I think that maybe the biggest learning is just kind of trying to be adaptable, but also really, a lot of people will push vendors for the best opportunities, but even having to do that more, knowing everyone is constrained based off of the circumstance, but having to be even a little bit tougher in those conversations, as you are receiving pressure from all sides from the budgetary standpoint.
And we have another one from the Q&A. It is, what are your lessons or suggestions for finding private partners for a project?
I guess I'm trying to think of that can go both ways of like private partners from a technology standpoint, as well as things get larger from a funding piece. I'll be honest. I'm actually maybe sitting here in a lucky position that my boss is the PI and does a lot of that effort, and so my role is mainly on once those partners are in place to do the proposal and the implementation of the project. I think from where I have been involved with finding those partners is going to a lot of types of conferences and presentations and networking where those topics are being discussed, and who's in the room, a lot of people looking to do.
Okay, and we have another question. It is, are there advantages to having a public university lead such a complex team of private companies?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things, especially in the eyes of, in our case, the DOE, is that especially not as the technology owner, our role, we want to see the technology succeed without having, I guess, personal investment in like what the technology is, right? There are multiple technologies that we're involved in with projects because we want to see, in this case, carbon capture and the impacts of that be successful. And so as a more, I'll say, neutral party or unbiased, right? at the end of the day, when we're doing this testing, the data is what the data is. And we're just here to really try to push the success of being able to do the testing and the validation. And if it comes out to be positive, push it on to that next step. Yeah, I think being able to be a fully invested in the success, but also from a neutral stance has, I guess, gained, I guess, trust or credibility with the funding agencies.
Okay, and another one is based on cost overrun issues that you discussed, is there anything you can do during budget preparation to avoid such issues? What else could be done to avoid such problems?
Yeah, again, these are very unique scenarios. I can guarantee no one could have prepared for what we came through with that with COVID. But I think maybe the two things come to mind. One is, a lot of larger companies, whether from like contractors or the technology owner, have databases and resources to say, this is the cost of doing this type of construction. Again, just like years and years of data points, trying to do that prep work as a guidance, and also that contingency planning. Again, I'm thinking there are certain things that will come up that you just cannot know about. I always say you don't know what you don't know. But for looking at the broader success of the project and having it being able to continue to move forward without like a 9-month stall of budget talks, negotiations, etc., being able to clarify if this does happen, who will help support putting money in. And actually, there are, for some of the larger projects now, for the DOE grants, they actually have a clause in there requiring a statement of who will do contingency. But even if that doesn't exist, having those conversations early. So yeah, it's hard. Like I think there are definitely ways you can plan, but there's something you just can't necessarily expect.
So, thinking about the example that you gave and the cost of building increasing and then decreasing the operation budget to stay within the total budget, how will the less time for operation, how will that impact the knowledge gathering for understanding how it will work after the project is done?
Yeah, I think a completely fair question. And we worked with both DOE and the technology provider to discuss and dial in what is that minimum amount that we can run and still achieve the same level of confidence in the technology, right? Obviously more is better, but there is what's the lowest point, and that's where we ensured that we're playing around. Like in our conversations, right, you spend so much time and money to build the dang thing that you have to at that point just invest more to make it worthwhile to run. So yeah, we did decrease, but we not past the point where it devalued why you're running in the first place.
Okay, if there are any last minute questions, please put them in the chat. And then Stephanie, do you have any final remarks that you want to leave us with?
Oh, great point. No, nothing that comes to mind. Just I think again, I'll use that word resiliency of it's especially in the current markets and with a lot of changes within the grant funding requirements. Understanding that a lot of folks are in the same boat. You're not on an island, and just trying to build the competency and use the support around you to get to where you need to be.
Great. Thank you so much. And thanks to our attendees for coming to this seminar. We also have another seminar at the end of November. And yeah, thank you again, Stephanie, and have a great week.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, everyone.